All right, welcome everybody. This is the AminiCorp hour. We're talking about where to put your money for climate collapse. I mean, it's on like Donkey Kong, folks. It's happening right now. We were seeing the gradual buildup, and this is the year. I think it's clear to anybody with eyes that we have shifted into the age of climate collapse. I'm calling it collapse because you need to understand how profound this is going to be. We're never going to know exactly what's driving it, but it's happening right now. So I don't even want to talk about that stuff. I want to get into the crazy shit that's going on right now. So basically, you got to understand something here. That Where's this image of mine? This is a picture of global ocean currents. The sun's rays hit the atmosphere, they warm up the equator. That warm water at the equator, if you're looking at the side, rises up, pulls cold water from the bottom, and then the warm water finds a path via, driven kind of by the spin of the Earth and the Coriolis effect across the planet to places where it can dump that energy, get cold again, and then drop down. And so this rising where it's warm and dropping where it's cold drives the entire global weather patterns like a engine, really. And what you need to understand is that these 2 points right here in the north are greatly impacted. Or these are where heat is released into the atmosphere, and then the winds, based on again the spin of the Earth and the Coriolis effect, drive that heat around the planet, and we have these two Arctic bands here, pretty much in parallel, keeping polar air out from the moderate temperate zones that we all mostly live in. So what's happening is off the coast of Iceland, these glaciers are melting and they're dumping fresh water into the ocean, changing the salinity, moving this spot, right? And so this is all moving in real time. This part here along the Gulf Stream of America, this is moving. And so now, and you might be thinking, well, is it really moving? Yes, it's really moving. You start looking at Gulf Stream collapse on Google, and the science will start popping up, all right? From The Guardian, current Gulf Stream at its weakest in 1,600 years, study shows. And I don't know if it's slowing down completely or if it's moving. And so where we're expecting it to be, it's now, elsewhere. And so we're measuring like the fringe of that action. But this is literally happening. And so as it moves, it's going to move the entire weather pattern of the entire globe with it. You double click on some of those links in there, and you get into this isn't a good one, from PBS. This is it. All right. Major Atlantic current is at a critical transition point. People are trying to figure out what changed during the last ice age, the Younger Dryas, and an analysis in the Nature, one of the most prestigious peer-reviewed papers ever, goes into detail about this current and how it's moving. And now we're starting to see the effects. You see this flooding in Pakistan. It's like a insane amount of water is being dumped on poor Pakistan, causing an inland lake to form that's viewable from space. I mean, they say 1,100 people died, but it's probably 10 times more. I mean, God only knows, right? In a rural area, reporting might not be as quick. This is like a big deal. And the other question is, when will that water recede? How long will that lake stay there? You start looking at Chinese heat wave. This is a very big deal. No one's talking about. Unrelenting. China's worst heat wave on record is crippling power supplies. Heat wave in China is most severe ever recorded in the world. China's unrivaled 70-day heat wave. I know the press loves getting things more crazy than they are, but this is actually downplaying the risk right now. It is unbelievably impactful. You have videos on TikTok of folks, of older folks hanging out, like filling grocery stores to get air conditioning, sitting in caves, sitting on rivers just to get some relief from the heat. Because, hey, ding dong, what's that? Oh, that's the fact that not most people don't have air conditioning units in the world. They have to just deal with the temperature, and it's not dropping below 90 at night. So sleep is getting hard to maintain, and this is going to start having a profound impact. Some are estimating that it might affect up to 900 million Chinese folks. And you go to Europe. Oops. I think France, if I'm not mistaken, France drought, nuclear power plants. So there's droughts in France. The most severe drought on record in France has also cost the country's energy production, as nuclear power plants responsible for more than 70% of the country's electricity have to cut down activity temporarily to avoid discharging dangerously warm water into rivers. So the rivers are getting smaller, and they're having less of a, you need a certain, these power plants are built along rivers to take in water and help cool it naturally, because you produce so much excess heat from a power plant, and you have to keep the reactor at a certain temperature. And so you have this natural body of water that provides cheap, free, cold water effectively. Well, that calculus is changing, and they can't cool the power plants, and they can't put out even more hot water. And so this, you need that chain, you need the delta, and you need the difference in temperature, cold water and the hot water. As that shrinks, the engines effectively won't run. It's like running out of coolant for your car. It needs to shut down. And so this is happening. It's going to be a rough, brutal winter for Europe as they get potentially, this might be let's get into the climate change, right? So basically, it seems like whatever the climate was in that place, it will be different for the next 5 to 10 years. It might change forever. There's two camps that's saying, oh no, we're causing this, it's never going to come back. There's another camp that's saying, no, it's driven predominantly by solar activity, and that cycle will dictate what happens here. So I'm hopeful. I'm in the camp of the latter, and that as the sun's magnetic field picks up again in 2025, it's in 2030, by 2035, we'll be back on course in a stable climate. I don't know, right? Nobody knows. It's physically impossible to calculate what's going to happen here. However, we do know that that period in between, regardless of what you believe is going to happen after, we're going to see massive change. So is it going to change and come back, or is it going to change and go somewhere new? And if it does, is it bad? Is it good? Right? These are the kind of questions that we can't answer yet. However, the change in that period, in that interim period, is like every model predicts that. So what's going to happen? You're going to see places that were getting no rain get rain. Places that were getting rain get no rain. Places that were cold get warm. Places that were warm get cold, right? The polar vortex that used to just dip into Chicago during the winter in my youth in the late 90s and early 2000s, that was a new term because the jet stream, we saw again this band right here. The jet stream caused by the dump of heat into the atmosphere and the Coriolis effect, it dips down and lets the cold Arctic air down, and it used to just hit Chicago. Now it went back to all the way down to Texas for a couple of weeks, maybe 2 years ago, crashed their electric grid and their electricity markets, which were impacted as well, and also caused damage to people's lives because of the trading of technology or electricity futures, effectively energy futures. So huge impact, right? That's going to happen more often. All of a sudden, you're getting Arctic air where you didn't. All of a sudden, you're getting monsoons where you didn't. And the challenge is going to be that this is going to cause farms to be in the wrong place overnight, cities to be in the wrong place. Missouri, Jackson, Missouri, got such strong flooding that their water treatment plant pumps shut down. And now the whole entire city, 180,000 people, yesterday, or 2 days ago now, can't get running water an entire city can't get running water, not because of lack of water, but because too much water. These are the complicated, unpredictable things to occur from climate change. And so the question is, what do we do, right? The economy will not go away. Human life will not end, but it will get extremely different and difficult. I mean, people are dying now. What else is going to happen? And so this is something I've been thinking about a lot. If you want to talk about this and learn about this and be updated about this, go ahead and follow my account wherever you're seeing this live stream. It's going out on Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So follow along. I'm going to do this once a week, collect the data, and then discuss, okay, what does this mean? What could we do? Capital markets are going to be allocating money like crazy because of the extreme risk that is coming from what were once seen as like stable assets. And so they're going to have to move their money around into new assets that are strengthened or hardened against climate change, or hell, make money off it. This is not going to be solved. The suffering might be mitigated by government intervention, but they're going to have to. The government's going to have to do the least they can so that they can help the most they can, right? And so the average person, might have a FEMA camp that they can go to and get some air conditioning, but quality of life is not going to be improved by government forces unless they do some crazy Marshall Plan, and even then, it's not necessarily going to make your life better. It's just going to hopefully prevent it from getting as worse as it possibly could get, right? And so the private sector has to step in and mass produce innovation. Commercialization of new technologies is going to exceed what we've ever considered possible. And there's some silver linings that are going to come from this. I was just talking to a friend of mine. He told me about the new Ford Ranger, all electric, coming out from Ford. Ford, by the way, is a powerful stock to pick right now. I don't invest in stocks, but their plan is really good and it's doing really well. Very impressed by the new leadership there. Finally get it out of the Ford. How many generations of your children need to run your company into the ground until you finally let a professional operate it? Good Lord. If the stock isn't enough for you, you got to run the damn thing too. Your ideas suck. Okay, step aside. Let someone who earned it get in there. And this new CEO is doing really well. And one of the obvious bets he's making, or he made probably 2 years ago, on the pre-launch of the Ford Lightning, the 150 electric hybrid and full electric vehicle, how well they're doing, was wow, we got to expand this to everybody. So they are launching a Ford all-electric Ranger, which is a smaller version of the Ford 150, F-150, and probably starts at 25, 35K, something like that. It's an electric pickup for all. Well, it's not slated to come in until 2025. And I was telling my friend, I love that. I think that's really cool, but I am not ready to invest in the long-term stability or the midterm stability, short to midterm stability of Chinese electric vehicle manufacturing, batteries specifically, and Taiwanese chips. You have a regional conflict ready to pop off between China and Taiwan, and Taiwan is all the manufacturing for the chips that we are, relying on. China is all the manufacturing for the batteries that everyone's relying on. Now, here's the thing, right? China is ready to defend Taiwan aggressively, violently if they must. However, they don't want to because it'll be like Russia or America invading Afghanistan. It's a very hardened terrain. It's extremely hard to defend, attack. You have to have a really intense amphibious assault. No one has had a major amphibious assault since World War II or what have you. China certainly hasn't in a long time. Their current troops are not battle hardened like American troops are. America could go fight a war tomorrow. Yeah, we'll get fucking PTSD, but our men and women have they know exactly what to do. They're writing new training manuals based on field combat. I mean, they are extremely, prepared. However, they need to rest, for the love of God. So that's like something we don't want to do. That'll break our military. That will take us to the brink, is a full-scale war with a major superpower right now. The issue with China is that it'll enter into a prolonged guerrilla combat where they have the high ground, the Taiwanese have the high ground, and they are attacking the low, amphibious assaults and so on and so forth. Nightmare scenario. I think that might be avoided because of the drought. It could be avoided because of the heat wave in China. If it affects enough people, if it affects enough waterways, if it affects enough food production, then the pain and suffering that they could afford in a time of surplus has now dwindled to less, because there's major problems internally that must be addressed, because you have to feed your people or else you lose your government. So, Sri Lanka is not entering a war right now because they got major problems to deal with. So the way it might go is the opposite. If this is the Fed just came out and said that they're not expecting inflation to go away for the foreseeable future. So 2 to 3 years out, they don't expect it to go down. So they don't expect to be lowering rates. We're in a new economic era. Climate collapse is happening. There is a new climate forming, but the interim is going to be madness, like a top that's losing its energy, starts wobbling wildly. That's what's happening to our wind currents and our atmospheric currents, which carry the heat. Protect the keep polar wind north and south of the meridians, and then move water effectively, right? So God only knows where these things are going. Like, nobody could tell you. However, it's safe to say they're going to move. And so maybe we avoid World War III, but I'm still not bullish on Chinese batteries and Taiwanese chips. Like, that is not a supply chain that we should be betting on for the next 5 years. I don't think it's going to happen. The 2025 Ranger is going to be mauled by these issues. And if we had onshore capabilities, that's another thing, but we don't. And so by the time we get that up, Ford's going to miss their earnings. However, there's nothing to say that Ford, if you're getting doom and gloom, like, the things we're going to lose first are going to be unnecessary federal regulations and costs. That's the first thing that is going to be removed by massive climate collapse, like massive, what would you even call this? Like, it's not quite geopolitics. It's like climate politics or something, right? Like, where the farms need to be, where the farms are going to be in the wrong place overnight. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're getting a heat wave where you used to, produce all your grain, then that's going to change. Now, we can move our farms quickly. We can develop new farms very quickly if there's enough, impetus. But the idiots up in, the Netherlands and Sri Lanka are trying to strip global emissions of CO2, lower them by stripping farmers of their ability to use nitrogen-based fertilizer by 30% in 1 year. And so, these farmers in the Netherlands are literally creating IEDs out of hail barrels and putting them on the side of the road, and they're blocking streets, they're shooting manure on government buildings. I mean, it's like they are not having it. And they're right. This is not the way to go. This is not the time for this shit, okay? Sri Lanka collapsed because of the same mandate. It's not going to happen. It's not going to last. It can't last. It's just simply not going to last. So very quickly, you're going to see a lot of people moving. You thought people were moving now. What happens when there's a lake formed in the middle of Pakistan, right? The people are gone out of that area. Where are they going to live? The other thing is that now lakefront property? I mean, I know people are dying, but did a new market just form? Did we see a creation of economic opportunity where there was absolutely none or less? I don't know. Like, people need to live, so we're going to have to build houses elsewhere. You're going to see new forms of construction. You're going to see new forms of on-site power production. California is running out of fresh water right now. One of the largest reservoirs is going dry. They haven't been able to, with all this budget surplus and all of this clapter haven't been able to fund a fucking major capital project in the last 50 years. I mean, Jesus Christ, how long would it take to have built more desalination plants, and now they're going to need them and they don't have them? So what does that mean? That means private industry is going to step in and make smaller desalination kits. You're going to see mansions get torn down in the middle of, along the coast or slightly inland, and you're going to see pipes being dumped into the ocean to draw water to desalinate, in a much smaller capacity. You're going to see personal desalination kits. You're going to see homes start to get adapted to climate shift, and they're going to add major rainwater capture systems, major filtration for that rainwater capture. These aren't expensive things. You already got the roof, you already got the square footage, you already got the gutters. Put it in a filter, store it underwater, underground, right? You're going to see greenhouses get popped up next to, on, and around properties. You're going to see, decentralized power grids. You're going to see, mark my words, in 10 years from now, you're going to see Ford, you're going to see companies sell car kits that let you build your own little cheap car. Think, the famous Indian three-wheeler kind of powered rickshaw, right? Motorized rickshaw. Like, there's other ways to do stuff, and we're going to be forced to do it in those other ways. So capital is going to flow into these new ideas, and you're going to see mass-produced innovation like very quickly, because you're going to have to. There is no prevention anymore, only risk mitigation. No amount of CO2 you cut today is going to do anything to stop what's happening right now. 0% effect. Round to zero. It's so low it'll round to zero. These are forces that are well beyond our control. You're going to see a whole reconfiguring of the global supply chain, right? Onshoring and nearshoring. You're going to see probably what's going to happen to Africa. The African continent has gone through major, what would you call it, geological changes since the Young Dryas 10,000 years ago. There used to be a lush rainforest where now there is a desert. Are you going to see rainforests move effectively where follow the water? Like, plants grow very quickly. You don't need to wait hundreds of years. But this is happening now. There's simply no stopping it. And so we need to be more proactive, like today, if you want to be ahead of it at all. You can wait for the effects to hit you, but if you haven't been paying attention, it's going to start slapping you in the face. You're probably going to see more multi-generational family housing. You're going to see more homeschooling. Like, all these rigid systems we have in place were great when everything worked, when there was no variance. Now that there's all these, the system is being shook, you're going to see those systems collapse, and just instantly families, people's communities, businesses are going to reorganize in their best interest. It's going to be, the spur of more new ideas than we've ever had. Because let's face it, we've been lazy. America has been so lazy since the end of World War II. Besides the immigrants that have come up with the majority of our inventions and new businesses, and let's call them entrepreneurs, and inventors and entrepreneurs, and the military enlisted folks that have actually fought the wars since World War II, the mass majority of the population has been sitting around doing nothing effectively, and being, allowing things to kind of decay. So you're gonna have to get off your ass and get to work here, which is okay, because America is, has a very strong and deep work ethic. But what you're gonna see, I think, is something else that's interesting, is that you're gonna, what's gonna happen with the dollar, right? The value of the dollar, inflation is not stopping. There's too much cash in the system. Where's, what's going to happen to the value of the dollar? I don't know, but I do know that there's a new reserve currency between China and Russia, and it's obvious, and it's a good thing that now the world has entered into a multipolar environment where you have America, Russia, and China, and Europe. Everyone's voice is getting relatively louder as America's gets nominally quieter. And we're going to need that cooperation to solve these problems. And we're not going to have time for war because we have to figure out what the hell is going on. One thing I think is going to happen is you're going to have a lot of people in America leave the country so that their dollar gets them more, and they're going to find something very interesting, is that the lifestyle in America sucks. If you're not rich in America, this place is so fucking stressful for you. If you're out of, there's two classes in America mostly. The 20% that make more than they need every month, and the 80% that don't make enough. They make less than they need every month. And so they're constantly juggling and putting money on a credit card, not paying this bill to pay that bill. The 20% that have more than they need, they're like, oh, this is great. I'm working from home and I just moved to Charlotte and I'm buying a motorcycle and let's go travel, blah, 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 Airbnb, avocado toast, right? That's a different world than the 80% that are like, if my car gets a flat tire, I am fucked. I cannot afford a $250 speeding ticket right now. I have $22 to my name for the next 7 days. I have, $14,000 in student loan debt. I would buy a house, but I have to spend $600 a month on a student loan payment for the next 30 years because I was tricked into thinking this is going to be a positive ROI. And so the college would never lie to me. My admission counselor has my best interest at heart, and here, et cetera, right? There's a million ways to get sucked into a bad financial situation. So that 20% might end up leaving, or a large part of that 20%, because their money is going to go. They're already working remote, and they're in demand everywhere. And their money is going to go a lot further in almost any other country. And their quality of living is going to go up. So that's a huge opportunity for everybody. Housing, education, services, travel arrangements, security, language services, like all that stuff. That kind of money is extremely powerful to a city. And Charlotte is booming because it is attracting all these work from home folks, remote workers during the pandemic, and then it just accelerated. And so the local economy here is growing so fast because the tax base is growing so fast because they're bringing those good jobs remotely with them. They don't have to get, it's very, all of a sudden, you don't have to get in a manufacturing plant to bring 400 jobs. That amount of people just moved in 4 days, right? Think about that. 100 people a day plus are moving to Charlotte. So, and that's the case in many cities. So you're going to see an Americanization of, I believe, predominantly Eastern European countries. Croatia, Latvia, Bulgaria, et cetera, et cetera. These countries are extremely affordable, beautiful, scenic. They have heavy English literacy, if you will. Lots of high-speed internet, rail lines, access to Europe, Asia, et cetera, good food, good housing, et cetera, right? Quality of life is very good. You bring an American income there, you're living like you would be, you almost double or triple your income all of a sudden. So what that is also going to do is bring like American, not grit, but can-do attitude, right? Why don't you all have a not co-work, but like that bias for action, right? And diversity of thought and Western business acumen, which is, I think, the best form of business in America, in the world, is an American philosophy of business. I can get into that for many reasons, but there's a natural generosity to it. There's a natural trust. There's a collaborative aspect to it. There is a professional, like America has the most professionals in the world. And you can kind of understand how I'm defining professional, right? Like executives or something. We're the easiest to do business with, and we produce the most value because of the way we do our business. Fair, honest, clear, transparent. Now, I'm not talking about the corrupt folks, because that exists everywhere, right? Corrupt corporations are usually multinationals. I'm talking about American business people that do business in America, right? We're used to engaging with other ethnicities, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's going to like be a really amazing import to these countries, or export of America is going to be Americanism. And hell, you might see entrepreneurship blow up, not in like sexy tech, but like import export, in like shipbuilding, you know, like real businesses, the 98% of businesses that don't get venture capital. And so this is actually going to increase your tax base in America too, because a lot of people are going to want to keep their U.S. citizenship. You're going to see, I think, the Europeanizing of America, as it doesn't make sense for that 80% to work harder and harder if they're getting paid less and less relative to the rise in, you know, the inflation's going, and they're, you know, inflation has been rising every year. This minimum wage has not. I think how dumb that is. Like, do you want your country to collapse? Then don't raise minimum wage when the cost of living increases. You want your country to sustain itself and grow healthy? Then increase it in step, right? It should be like $20-something an hour now. And listen, if you can't be a profitable business and pay that, that's fine. You're not a for-profit business. You're a nonprofit. If you don't have that much profit, you're a nonprofit. And that's fine. You get better tax breaks, right? Make a good salary, but you're not a very profitable business. And that's okay. Like maybe a retail brick and mortar shouldn't be a for-profit enterprise because you barely make any profit anyway, right? So all I'm saying is people are they're quiet quitting. They're doing the laying down worker in China. It's happening right now. And you're going to see people like check out for a month. Like, why are we working so hard in America? We all work harder than like anybody else effectively in many ways. And yes, we produce the world's innovations, and so they get to enjoy that. But if those innovative folks move to other countries and they're innovating from elsewhere, then why do we need to work so hard here, right? The innovation is coming from elsewhere. We weren't the inventors and the entrepreneur and the capital allocator. So we're going to take the month of August off, and we're going to go RVing in the great, national parks of America. What are you going to do about it, retail worker? You're already a retail company. You're dying for employees. At a certain point, if enough people do that, it's going to be like Europe, where they're like, we're checking out. Nobody's around for the month of August. They're going summering in Greece because it's a $45, $90 ticket on a train, and it's affordable, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to see a lot more motorcycles in America because of gasoline, but not only gasoline costs, upkeep, efficiency, and lifestyle choices. You're going to see a lot more like local carpentry and what would you call it? Furniture, like woodworking shops. If you tried to buy a couch recently, it takes like 6 to 26 weeks to get your couch because of all the issues. And because it's being made in another country from wood from another continent, shipped across 3 different lanes, assembled here and then retailed down the street. It's stupid. It's stupid. We shouldn't be doing this. And so you're going to see people just buying antique furniture, upgrading into their garages and selling it locally for a fraction of the cost for an immediate sale. They're going to start taking commissions. It's going to be a whole thing. Everyone's going to have a garage business, a micro manufacturing business out of their garage, because Welders can put their skills to work, carpenters, so on and so forth. The net positive of this climate collapse is you're gonna see all the useless regulations be ignored and eventually just wither away and die. Because, it will be too expensive to build a house the official way. You're going to see people, like, imagine an America where you could start any business you want. Yes, you're personally liable for what it does. You're going to be able to build a house whenever you want, wherever you want, and again, you're personally liable for it. And you'll be able to, like, make your own vehicle and even your own gasoline. Like, there's like distilling, methods from the 1900s of making your own gasoline or ethanol from like sugarcane and stuff like that. Like, that's where things are headed, because the supply chain, the world we've been living in, it is beyond make believe. It is so hard to maintain that the slightest shock to the system is going to just make it impossibly slow and expensive. And this is the world we live in. I don't want climate shift to happen, but here we are. So I want you to start thinking globally. I want you to start looking into real estate that looks dumb, right? I'm looking at like desert lots in the West. If it's getting, if the rainfall pattern is moving, well, where is the desert that's going to become a lush oasis, right? Looking at, do I want to live in the city center when I buy my next house? Or do I want to live near a body of water? Do I want to have some more space around me, right? Do I want to plot a land where family can come and live with me and it won't be on top of us, right? Multi-generational real estate. That's the kind of stuff I'm looking at. It's happening. I need you to start thinking about making money in this new economy, because that is not going to change. And you can sit there and feel climate change anxiety, which I felt for years before I understood that, oh my God, every problem we have, there's like patents and research on the solutions. The solutions have already been found. They just have not been commercialized. And so as the news gets scarier, I want you to get more intense about building a business or participating in this new economy, because there's a very important psychological trick that occurs that I've found. When you are devoted to building a better world yourself, just you're thinking about it, you're researching it, you're chatting about it, you're taking notes, you're throwing ideas out there, right? Just starting a business, but the idea is one of these ideas that you think is going to be big during climate collapse. Manufacturing desalination kits, right? With like really long tubes, right? Something like that. I don't fucking know. But you get creative, which is always good. But you also then start focusing on solutions, and you will be so surprised at how many solutions are out there waiting. And what ends up happening, this is how I was rather unscathed psychologically from COVID. I ended up realizing I had a bubble of positivity around me, because everything I was working on was a solution, a positive aspect. And so everything I interacted with was positive. And so I had this beautiful little cocoon of positivity. And like, yes, it was scary to look at the news and see this and that, but I could settle down. And as soon as I turned the news off, I would come back to my reality, my people, and my solutions. And you get to a place where then your field of vision becomes filled with positive things. And this is really helpful psychologically, because climate anxiety is a huge thing. And I felt it. Your crushing anxiety about the climate crisis is normal. Smithsonian Mag. Here, on and on and on and on. You don't want to be stuck in that. And the truth of the matter is, there was this book I read. I could not recommend it enough. It's called 12 Seconds. And it was the true story of the American effort to invent and mass produce an artillery fuse. a proximity-based artillery fuse. And it was the most fascinating story. If you're into engineering or science at all, and then of course World War II history, super, super good book. Highly recommend it. And basically, it taught me this one thing. You know, the the Nazi war machine had really good air support and air power. And it was really hard to shoot down these airplanes back in the day because of the inability for you to know exactly how fast and how high they were. And so radar wasn't super developed, if at all, back then. And so you had to guess where they were and where they were going to go, so you can shoot where you think they're going to be. And then the bullets, the giant artillery shells, have to be manually adjusted to explode at that point. And so it took something like 20,000, 40,000, tens of thousands of rounds to hit one airplane. And so what ended up happening was that naval ships were completely undefendable against air attack. Same with cities and tanks. And it became even worse with the V2 rocket, which was being launched from the southern, I think, France, or from the north into London. And like 4,000, 5,000 people died from those attacks, but the psychological toll was horrible. And you would hear this thing go into the air like a motorcycle, this very unique hydrogen peroxide engine, and then it would get to a place that was pre-programmed, and it'd be moving so fast you couldn't do anything about it, and then the engine would kick off, and it was such that by the time it started falling, it would land on its area of impact rather inaccurately, but it would take about 12 seconds to drop. So you would just be waiting for 12 seconds. The whole city would be waiting for 12 seconds from hearing this roar in the sky to counting down 12 seconds to know if they were the ones that are going to die from this bomb. And this happened like thousands of times for 2 years straight, on and on and on. The city of London, right? Major metropolitan area. Again, unknowable or undefendable. So a university researcher was commissioned, pulled into some research project, and started down this path randomly of trying to solve this problem. And the challenge in solving this problem was unbelievably difficult, because to shoot an artillery artillery shell such that it explodes at a very specific spot requires complex circuitry on the device, the shell itself. And it's moving at incredible speeds forward, at incredible distances, and with an extremely high rate of spin. So the centripetal forces are massive, right? And so you have this big boom, and then this long distance, and right, like too much force to put anything in there. So they had to figure out how to actually mechanically detect airplanes. Was it going to be from sound or heat or a couple different things? It turned out radio transmitter was the best approach, where it would send a signal, detect, the signal would bounce back off a large piece of metal, the airplane, in a specific way, in a very distinct way, and the device would know. And then it became a matter of manufacturing new electronics that never existed in such a way that they could repeatedly stand these very high forces, forward and centripetally. And then it became a matter of how do we mass produce these things, right? Finally, all those things were solved. However, in the meantime, the Nazis had an entire secret city built in the north of Germany where they were advancing and testing new technologies, their R&D city. And it was beautifully designed. It was centrally planned. It was well-staffed. There was this many parks per family, right? Because the scientists had to come up and their whole family had to come with them. There was this many tennis courts. There was picnics in the park. The family life was very beautiful and serene, so the scientists could go feel secure working. But if they didn't do it right, or anything happened, they were killed, right? And so there was this horrible sense of dread amongst all scientists. Even though the place was extremely well funded and large and professionally designed, et cetera, innovation was very low. Then on the American side, this massive problem out of nowhere. We got to solve this problem immediately. This is horrible. It's only going to get worse. Our destroyers are at risk. Our cities are at risk. Our tanks are at risk, and they're being decimated right now. So how do we turn the tide? Oh, we have this idea, this one device. How do we make it? Well, this guy started in a basement of a lab, and then he got some good science, and then he got a little bit more funding, and then he took over the lab across the street, and then he got a little bit more funding. He ends up in like a garage, like a mechanic's garage, I can't remember where, with like, makeshift security around it, and like over 1,000 people end up working for him, and this thing just grows organically through innovation. And this guy devotes his life to it. He doesn't see his family for like these 2 years, and it just happened because of the American ability to invent. Truly, that is what saved World War II. Not only did the nuke, force Japan to surrender, but this artillery shell allowed the aircraft carriers to be defendable. So now they could go and exert influence in different areas of the Pacific. It turned the tide of the Asian theater. Not only were they able to instantly stop V2 attacks, such that they relieved the London populace from this anxiety instantly, they were then able to use it against ground troops because they were getting pummeled by artillery, and this shell will be able to go over the horizon, detect the artillery machines and tanks, and then blow up. And it decimated German troops to the point where it caused their final surrender. The Germans. This one little device. And so I bring this up because the worse it gets out there, and it's going to get worse, the more innovation will occur. The problem will cause the solution, by definition. So I don't know what the path out is. There isn't really one. I don't know what the path through this is, but I know it will be found, because that's how it works. The worse a problem gets, the more people start thinking about solutions, the more capital gets allocated, the more focus and attention occurs, the more innovation develops, the more solutions are on the market, the more people are talking about it, the more marketing, so on and so forth. So the level of the problem causes the solution to occur. The Nazi war machine was so powerful that it caused its own demise through the invention of an unknown, like never before considered technology, a manufacturing process, and use cases, right? That's what America brings to the fight against climate collapse. And it's in your blood, it's your birthright as an American to help solve this problem through public-private partnerships and innovation. So with that, I say good day. I got to go make some magic happen.